Hello and welcome. You are watching QTV and you are watching the Week in Review. I'm Ade Darame, and across from me, not the usual suspect, Mamadou Mbodj, but I'm pleased to say we have the man himself from State of Affairs, Aliou Cissé. Aliou, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ade. It's a pleasure to be here on the program with you.
And honestly, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And we have Lamindi Sonko doing the signing. Now, for both old and new viewers, or should I say regular and not so regular viewers, the show is called The Week in Review because we tend to take 10 big stories from the week just gone by that we considered worthwhile getting into in some detail. So what are those stories? Well, there's a thing, I tried to memorize this, but it's quite difficult. It's the Public Administration Modernization for Citizen-Centric Service Delivery Program. Thankfully, everybody's calling it PAMP, P-A-M-P. That was launched, almost $48 million worth, and it's worth getting into, and we'll find out more about it. Also, of course, this is the first show since Tabaski. How was yours? I hope it was good. And we look at the effect and the kind of post-Tabaski effect, particularly on traffic. It was really interesting. And guess what? For the first time ever, the Gambia is to validate a land policy. Yes, for the first time ever. And also the PRU shooting case, 2023. That case is still in court, and recently some top officials have been subpoenaed to appear in court to give testimony. Also, outside of our borders, lots of crazy things happening around the world, including lots of things done by and triggered by American President Donald Trump. How are Gambians affected? We'll find out what our embassy in the United States has to say about this. And we have two sporting stories, quite historic. One of them, the Gambia is about to get, or we're planning to get, a professional football league. And the other one was something of a footballing earthquake. Yes, you probably guessed already, Senegal, they beat England. It was a friendly, but trust me, it had wide-ranging significance. So these are some of the stories. So let's get cracking, shall we? Now, that one that I struggled with at the beginning, PAMP, I think we'll just call it, was recently launched by His Excellency the President. We'll take a listen and then we'll get into it. Have a look, have a listen.
It supports the Gambia's efforts to raise its domestic resource mobilization, which is critical to the country's fiscal sustainability efforts. Additionally, the PAMP project carries the transformational potential in the areas of transparency and citizen engagement, a key priority for the government of the Gambia. This will be tested in the education sector first, and if successful, can provide lessons for closing the feedback loop and improving the delivery of key services across other sectors.
Raise and manage our resources, ensuring efficiency in our expenditures and institutions, as well as putting people at the center of governance circle. We will steadily pursue a direct course towards a more resilient, just and prosperous future.
Ali, we heard His Excellency the President there. Now, this project is all about enhancing public sector efficiency and service delivery in the Gambia. I think we've been here before in terms of discussion, but this is quite huge in terms of what is being projected, $47.7 million. That's not a mistake, dollars. And they're starting in the education sector, and then they roll out to the wider public sector. So, and I'll only use this phrase once, a game changer, possibly.
Indeed, a game changer, and then I will start by once again commending the World Bank who are supporting this project. They have been there for the Gambia and continues to support, our development agenda as far as, the development of this country is concerned. But like you said, quite an important project for the country in terms of at least trying to strengthen, the issue of, public service delivery in the country, and it's also a sort of, a vote of confidence from the World Bank as far as the ongoing, governance reform agenda is concerned. But like I will always say, the implementation of such programs will likely depend on how, collaborative, these whole parties who are concerned is involved in this.
Because any
process.
system is only as good as the people who,
Exactly.
who put it into practice and their willingness to embrace it. And I'll explain what I'm getting at here. I mean, since I came to the Gambia, anybody who knows me has probably heard me complain about my interaction with the public sector. You'll phone a government department or a ministry, or they'll send you a letter, and there's a number there. You call that number, nobody picks up. And when somebody does write to you, they'll give you a Gmail address rather than .gov.gm address. And all of these things, they're not running efficiently if you do that sort of thing. And then people will give you their personal phone number and say, you know, call me on this mobile number. I mean, so, you know, I'm trying not to get too excited, but at the same time, I'm hoping that this, you know, as I said, I used the phrase game changer, potentially,
like you said, I mean, these are some of the problems that we are facing in this country, and that's going to be one of the key challenges that they're going to face as far as the implementation of this program is concerned, because they might face some internal resistance, I mean, from people, because I mean, this project is coming into, you know, bring about certain changes that people are very much used to now. So it might they might face some kind of resistance. But like I said, I mean, if there's that, I mean, close collaboration among all the stakeholders who are involved in this project, I believe, I mean, the intended purpose of this project will be achieved. But until then, we will wait and see how the implementation will go.
Well, that's right. I mean, this week I had said that if they had invited me back onto the This Morning program, I was going to make an announcement saying that from next week, from Monday the 16th, I will start naming and shaming government departments, and I'll explain why. In the space of 2 days, I received 3 letters asking for coverage from a government ministry that did not have the date, the place, or the time. This mentally, DPT, date, place, time, should be routine. And as I said, you have difficulty phoning them up because, you know, there might be a number there that nobody picks up.
Exactly.
So these are basics that, you know, so I know this seems, you know, quite grand and so on.
I mean, these are some of the issues that we faced, I mean, as a media house. Sometimes, I mean, you receive a letter requesting for coverage. I mean, they will change the entire program and they will never get back to you to say, I mean, this program is cancelled until when you get there, and they're like, okay, the program is cancelled, or we have changed the venue of this event. I mean, like I said, these are all things that we are facing, but to be honest with you, I doubt, I mean, how could anyone actually, you know, write for a media coverage and you forget to put the name, the date and place of such event.
So to be sort of optimistic about this, they're not rolling it out across, they're starting with the education sector. And then this is kind of going to be the pilot. And then I guess that means that they will monitor it, do any tweaks that they need to do over the next year or so. And then if it's successful, and they'll see what works, what doesn't work, and then they'll roll it out, you know, having learned some lessons, hopefully.
I think it's important. I mean, like you said, I mean, you know, it's going to be in phases, and starting with the education sector is very important. And like you said, we just hope, I mean, the piloting, I mean, will bring out, I mean, positive results that, I mean, they can learn from to implement in other ministries, like the Ministry of Public Service, the Ministry of Health. I mean, these are all ministries that will that requires, I mean, some of these reforms. But then, like you said, I mean, we'll watch and see, I mean, how they go about implementing, I mean, such a project. But equally, we expect them to be transparent. I mean, there has to be that tracking as to, I mean, what's been achieved and what's not been achieved. It's not just about launching a project and that's the end of it. I mean,
you've hit the nail on the head there. I mean, I know we need to move on to other stories quickly, but you talked about transparency because this is meant to be citizen-centric and about engagement with citizens. And of course, transparency has to be at the forefront.
It's very important. It's very important.
As you said, let's keep our eyes crossed, fingers crossed rather, and our eyes open, I should say. But thank you for that. Now, at the top of the program, I mentioned the kind of post-Tabaski. This is the first show since Tabaski. And for those of us who came to work, you know, on Monday, it wasn't a public holiday, but you would never have guessed it. The whole country seemed to have decided it was a public holiday. Have a look. Have a listen.
The roads are mostly empty, and along the usually busy Kairaba Avenue, business activity is noticeably slow. Both commercial drivers and commuters are feeling the effects. As prices return to their normal level, commuters Lamin Tarawale and Omar Nice have additional complaints and expressed their frustration over the spike in taxi fares up to and during the festive period.
Traffic after Tabaski definitely is very hectic one.
Pre-Tabaski traffic has been chaotic, and in the past 3 days, most taxi drivers were overcharging, something that is really not fair. I think authorities should step in to address this.
Aliu, they think the authorities should step in to address this, but also one of the reasons why I chose that clip from the whole story was this whole thing about the charges. This is a time when people know people have to travel and they have no option, and so they bump up the prices for that short period, and people are really, money's tight already.
It is, and like you said, Tabaski remains one of the most significant events in the Muslim calendar. I mean, and during this period, I mean, most people in the urban cities will go back to the village to go and celebrate the Eid with their families. Sure. So certainly, I mean, even though, okay, there's that official public holiday that government will say, okay, we are giving holiday Friday and Saturday, but I mean, it goes beyond just beyond having that on paper. I mean, some people, I mean, they observe their Eid on Saturday, and then you expect to come back on Sunday and go to work on Monday. Even those who actually observe their Eid in the combos here, I mean, most of these commercial drivers, they have gone back to the village.
That's right.
So certainly, I mean, if there is no transport, how could you go to work?
I mean,
so
I got out to drive to work, and
exactly.
the streets were completely empty.
Completely empty.
And not just on the Monday, the Monday, the Tuesday, and
exactly.
even on the Wednesday when people were slowly coming back. So the point I kind of wanted to make is that I heard lots of people saying, why wasn't there an official public holiday? Because people seem to have made it an unofficial public holiday. When it falls at the weekend, by the way, if you're outside of the Gambia, Senegal or Guinea, and you're hearing Tabaski, we're talking about Eid al-Adha, which is all I ever knew it in Sierra Leone. It falls at a weekend, why not give people that extra day?
Maybe Friday and Monday.
Quite.
At least Friday and Monday could have been more flexible for those who have traveled to the village or those who have observed the Eid on Saturdays and not Friday. Sure. At least, they can spend, I mean, the Eid Saturday, Sunday with their family, and Monday they come back, and Tuesday they resume work. Okay. But at the end of the day, I mean, maybe in the private sector, could be better. But in government, I mean, most people wouldn't go to work on Monday, even senior government officials.
That's what I heard when we tried to go around. And sensibly, nobody had asked us to do any coverage.
Because it's a very important Muslim feast for Muslims. So, I mean, you go back to the village, I mean, you are meeting with relatives, with friends that you haven't seen for a while. So normally, it's only the Eid that will bring you together. Sure. So you have that short period just to interact and, I mean, do a lot of things with your friends. So it sometimes is beyond their control, because sometimes even if you want to come back from the provinces to the urban, there's no transport.
Exactly.
There's no transport. So
sure.
I think moving forward, I think these are some of the things that at least the government should consider next time.
They need to consider.
Especially in a country where you have almost over 90% Muslims. This is a very important feast for Muslims.
Very much, and I think that's very much the case. Thank you, Aliu. Thank you for that. And now on to a completely different matter. I was quite surprised when we were summoned via an invitation, and they said that it was to validate the Gambia's first national land policy. I thought, what, 2025, or is it 1925? But honestly, no, this is in 2025. We're going to get there somehow, somewhere. Why is it important? This clip might tell you. Have a look, have a listen.
We regularly hear of land disputes in almost every part of the Gambia. Much of this due to lax land ownership and land tenure laws. To address this new policy framework represents a shift in the Gambia's land administration and aims to enhance tenure security and development.
Time in our history, the Gambia now has a unified forward-looking framework to land use, ownership, management, and stewardship. One that reflects our national values, our socio-economic realities, and our shared aspirations for the future.
Aliu, I said, and I wasn't pretending when I said I was surprised that this was the first time that we're now getting, in fact, we haven't brought it into being yet, we're just discussing it. Because as we heard our colleague Loli M. Kamara there, almost weekly, you pick up the newspapers, you read a story about some land dispute, And I suspect watching this, you and I, Lamindi Sonko, we know people who've been involved in land disputes because, you know, the rules, the regulations are not so tight and not so, you know, sort of laid down for everybody to see and benefit from.
Yeah, to start with, is better late than never. At least, I mean, we are having one now, and considering the issue of land conflicts, I mean, in the country, I mean, from the Greater Banjul area to the issue of, I mean, you know, land borders in the provinces. I mean, exactly. So having such a policy, I mean, is quite important as far as, I mean, addressing the problems of land in the country is concerned. Like you said, I mean, we often receive reports of people, I mean, complaining about the issue of, you know, how they bought the land and then the land is sold to another party.
So the kind of multiple
and
ownership.
And then the next minute you hear physical planning saying, okay, we are demolishing this particular area because, I mean, they illegally occupy those places and all those things. But I believe with this policy, I mean, it should be able to address most of these challenges that we face. But like I said, I mean, it is one thing to develop a policy and validate it, but it's another thing to have it effectively implemented to the latter without compromising anything. Because for many, okay, that could be one of the challenges. I mean, the issue of land grabbing, the issue of, you know, land administrators, and of course, I mean, land local
kind of
local authorities, you know, involved in the issue of land and all those things. If that is not properly checked, then it might defeat the purpose of having the policy in the first place.
Well, that's true. And one of the things you mentioned there briefly was the thing about, you know, where people think they've bought a piece of land and they've built beautiful houses. We saw them being demolished. How did we ever get to that stage? Well, because we don't have a proper policy.
There's no proper policy, and what we see now is more like people doing land banking. Instead of people leaving their monies in the banks, they go and buy lands and keep it there. So you buy a land for maybe for 1 million today, maybe in the next 10 years you can sell it for maybe for $10 million. So all these things is happening now. So time will come. We are going to, in fact, as we speak, we're experiencing that land scarcity. And the population is growing. So at some point, where are we going to get lands? It's like all the lands are given away. All the lands have been taken. So these are some of the problems, I mean, that we are facing, and also the issue of the real estates. They also need to be regulated. So all these things are issues that, I mean, I hope the policy should be able to address.
I mean, when I kind of did a tour of the country, because I had to go and visit our regional reporters, there were swathes of land where there was nobody living. But of course, I realized the reason nobody was living there was because they didn't have amenities, you know, water, electricity, you know, good roads and so on. So where there are these things, of course, people will congregate. And as you said, that then creates a scarcity in that place because all the services and all the amenities are there and everybody wants to be where they are. Why wouldn't they?
Exactly. So especially if you go to the West Coast region, I mean, if you go to the courts, most of the cases there are land related.
Yeah, quite.
Most of them are land
Which
related.
is why they thought of setting up a special court to deal with just those.
Exactly. So we saw what happened in the case of Salaji, in the case of Olyundum. I mean, people who had already, you know, constructed their homes, just for someone to come and say, no, you are illegally occupying this place, you know, we have to demolish these structures. So sometimes it's quite painful. Some of these people, they have spent their life savings into this project. So imagine just coming and then, you know, you want to demolish those structures. I mean, it's quite painful. But like I said, the effective implementation of the policy is key. If you are not going to implement it, it's better not having the policy. Because it doesn't make sense just having a policy for the sake of having it and then it's not implemented. Or even when it comes to implementation, there's that sort of discrimination and selection who the policy should apply on or not. If that's the case, then, you know, it creates more tension than, you know, actually addressing problems.
Indeed, but I particularly love your phrase about better late than never. Thank you for that. I'll definitely remember that one. And story number 4, I mentioned also at the top of the program about the shooting case in which 3 police officers were shot, 2 of them fatally. And that trial is ongoing and we've been following it. Most of the nation have been following it. Here's a snippet of what happened recently, quite dramatic.
Under oath in a formal judicial setting, Lawyer Dabo stressed that the court has a duty to ensure a fair trial by allowing these key figures to clarify their prior remarks before the bench.
Before the bench, we had, you know, 3 top officials, someone government spokesman, Deputy Inspector General of Police, and who else? And
President, I think the advisor,
presidential advisor, because of statements they had made that the defense lawyer said might prejudice the case. So effectively, they're being called as defense witnesses. So quite a dramatic
actually,
development.
when I read this story, I was like, wow, this is sending a strong message about how independent the judiciary is now.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at their positions, senior government officials, just to subpoena them and say this will appear in court in relation to some of the remarks that they made when the incident happened. We all remember the first time the incident happened, there was a press conference at the police headquarters, and certain remarks were made that the suspect is a UDP supporter, works at the Brikama Area Council,
all of which,
and all of which is being proven differently in the court of law. And I think it's a good thing. It has set a precedent that, no matter what position you hold in government, usually you can be held accountable for remarks you make. And I think, now the question is whether they will respond or not. It's another thing, or whether there will be attempts to delay or resist. The court order. That's something we have to wait and see.
That would set a bad precedent if that happened. But I suspect, given the interest there is in the case, I would expect them to, because they do not want to be held in contempt of court by not attending. So I suspect whether they will answer, sort of freely and whatever, that might be determined. But I suspect, given the interest there is in the case, I think it would be unusual if they resisted. But I think you've said it all when you said that it tells us about the independence of the judiciary. In times past, this would not have happened.
Exactly, and it's just trying to give the suspect that constitutional, fair trial. No matter what happened, the suspect still deserve that, that fair trial. And if they feel, they should come and testify in court. Man, they should come. Whether their testimonies will be consistent with what they said is something that we also have to wait and see. But it's quite interesting. It's quite historic. For the judiciary. It shows that the judiciary is quite independent now.
Indeed. And just briefly, the co-accused, her lawyer, also supported this this application. But thank you for that, Ali. And this takes us to story number 5, which will also take us to the midway point of this program. Now, the central bank governor recently held a press conference, and he had some remarks to say about the Gambia's economy. What were those remarks? Well, we can't show you all of them because he spoke for quite a while, but here's a snippet.
The Gambian economy is expected to maintain its growth momentum in 2025 and over the medium term. Preliminary estimates from the Gambia Bureau of Statistics indicated that real GDP expanded by 5.3% in 2024, higher than the 5.0% revised figure for 2023. The central bank staff forecast the economy to grow by 6.5% in 2025, underpinned by improved business sentiment, public infrastructure development, tourism, financial services, and telecommunications.
We had to cut off the Bank of Nabua Sedi there, Aliu, but I think the viewers would have got the sense of what he spoke about, and for many, of course, the headline figure was that this year the economy is expected to grow by 6.5%. And our colleague who attended, Usman Jatta, said there was a kind of gasp from the journalists who were there because, the kind of feeling, the sentiment was that the economy was contracting. In fact, for the last 5 years, it has not been contracting, but it's not how people feel. How do we translate that with, as he talked about improved business sentiment, an upturn in the tourism sector, which has really picked up very, very well, consider the kind of post-COVID-19 depths that we had sunk to. But how does one translate that to the public so they start to feel good?
Yep. Quite very important. I've heard the governor talking about 5.3% GDP in 2024 and, projecting 6.5% this year. Quite a highly optimistic figure there. But for me, I will tell you, this will depend on how best, they're able to address the issue of inflation. the issue of the exchange rate. I mean, that is something that they
heavy dependence on imports.
Exactly, because I mean, when you look at most of the basic needs that we have in this country are imported, rice and
I mean,
all those
for me,
things.
it's always staggering, and to people who don't live here.
So the issue of controlling the inflation and stabilizing the exchange rate is very important.
Sure.
I mean, to actually meeting this expectation of 6.5% growth, because if we are not able to control this, I mean, it becomes a challenge then. Because I mean, I was following the press conference, and I had most of my colleagues, they were very much concerned about the exchange rate, especially the way the dollar.
Most of the questioning after was about exchange rates.
Especially now with the way the dollar is even depreciating to the CFA. These are all concerns. In fact, now some people will even ask for foreign currency in a country where the legal tender is dollars. You go to most of these, I mean, landowners and all those things. Yes, they ask for payment in dollars. Imagine asking in dollars in a country where the legal tender is dollars. So these are some of the things, I mean, that they should really try to look at to ensure they're able to achieve, I mean, the 6.5% growth. I mean, this is just a projection. I mean,
I was going to say, because something like improved business sentiment, that is so intangible.
Exactly.
It's not an actual thing.
Exactly.
It's more about a feeling. The business community feels, that things are getting better, and you then use that as your projection.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, I mean, you talk about 6.5% GDP. I mean, maybe my parents in the village, they don't even know what GDP is. All they care is about how things are directly impacting on their daily lives.
That's
so
right.
whether it is 7.5 or 3.5, all they want to do is make sure the cost of living is not expensive. I mean, the inflation rate is addressed. I mean, the issue of the exchange rate is addressed, and for them they're fine. I mean, they don't even care what the GDP is about. So it's about things that directly affect them. But like you said, I mean, it's promising, and I hope, I mean, by the end of this year, we will see the impact, because the impact also matters. It's not just the figures, but how does that impact people, on the ordinary lives of people.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that, Aliu. And that brilliantly takes us to the end of the first half. Join us after the break, when we will have 5 more interesting stories to come your way. Don't go away. Join us after this break.
Money and Orange Money has just made money transfer easier. Now you can send money from Gambia to Senegal directly from your Q Money wallet. So what are you waiting for? Get your Q Money account now and start sending money to your friends and families through Orange Money in Senegal now. For more information, call our customer care on 133. Q Money, Sunu Kalpe. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello and welcome, or I should say welcome back. You're watching QTV and you are watching the Week in Review. And of course, I always say at this point, if you've missed the first half, you've missed some very interesting stories. But don't switch off, because we got some very interesting ones. And the other reason why you should not switch off is because across from me, I have the man who presents. And I hope you watch this show called State of Affairs. And if you don't, go and check them out. All the old episodes are on YouTube. Aliu Sise. Aliu, thank you for your interjections in the first half.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ade.
Thank you. And here doing the signing throughout is Lamin Di Sonko. Lamin, thank you as always. And story number 6, again, top of the show, I mentioned what is happening around the world, and particularly what is happening around in America. President Donald Trump has set a record for the number of executive orders signed in the first 100 days by an American president, breaking Franklin D. Roosevelt's record. And now the embassy, the Gambian embassy in Washington, has issued a travel advisory for Gambians living in the United States. Have a look, have a listen to what they had to say.
President Donald Trump signed 143 executive orders within his first 100 days in office, an unprecedented pace that surpasses Franklin D. Roosevelt's 99 executive actions in the same time frame. Among these are sweeping reforms to foreign aid and immigration policy, sparking concern among affected diaspora communities.
The extreme dangers posed to our country by the entry of foreign nationals who are not properly vetted, as well as those who come here as temporary visitors and overstay their visas. We don't want them. The strength.
Meanwhile, protests erupted across the United States on June 10th in response to coordinated federal immigration raids. Demonstrations were reported in major cities, including Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago. These are the sort of protests which, if they happened in an African country, would have the USA warning its citizens not to visit that country. At the time of this broadcast, I am not aware of any African countries issuing a warning to its citizens not to visit the USA.
As we heard there, riots in LA, there's nothing else we can call them. And, you know, I'm somebody who, I'm always complaining to Western governments because, you know, when they had a demonstration here, not long after I came, the kind of 3 years Jotna and stuff, they were busy warning their citizens, don't go to Gambia. I mean, it was nothing compared to what's happening there. But it's the unfairness of the world we live in, Aliu, that he can, you know...
Yeah, that's the reality, I mean, we face. I mean, there are certain people who can do whatever they want and nothing will come out of it. And if it's on the other way around, I mean,
there will be consequences.
We will have been receiving condemnations here and there and all those things. But that shows you how you know, imbalanced the world is. I mean, there are countries that are more powerful than others. But the issue of, I mean, the deportation and all those things, these are quite uncertain times for many immigrants in the United States. I mean, like you have heard from Trump himself. I mean, they are targeting people who have overstayed their visas and all those things.
I mean, the reason we brought it is because, there was a bit I was going to include, but I took it out for time. And it was from Dr. Ismail Assise, who said that there are 3,000 Gambians already have been
on the list.
On the list for deportation. That's just within, you know, a matter of months. So it's quite serious.
And look at that figure, 3,000. Okay, for a country like the Gambia, for us, yes, 3,000 is a huge number.
Massive.
I mean, so, I mean, having to deport maybe 3,000 people, even though the process, you know, it might take longer, but this is Trump for you. I mean, this is a guy who doesn't believe in due process. He does what he wants. So at the end of the day, I mean, when you look at the impact that is going to have on the country, it's quite huge, because when you look at the remittances that these 3,000 people are sending back home, it's quite worrying, not just for them, but even their families back home here.
Well, this is it. As well as the families back home, some of those people, if they are deported, it might mean that their families have to come with them. So you have that as well. So you're talking about possibly 10,000 people. Remittances, the Trump administration has already signaled that they're going to start taxing remittances. So people don't send as much. The Gambia, last year and year before, when you think of official and unofficial remittances, in a year, just $1 billion. Just little Gambia. So all of that will be impacted. So for us, these things are not remote. These things that Trump has signed, they directly impact us already or are about to, really.
Indeed, the impact is something that we will feel, not just as citizens, but even the government. Because, I mean, when you look at, I mean, the diaspora community, their contribution to the socio-economic development of this country is something that no one can question. I mean, the remittances alone are far outweighed, I mean, the aid that we receive from donors and all those things. But like you said, I just hope, I mean, diplomacy will play a part in this whole thing. I just hope our government wouldn't just sit and fold their hands and then, you know, feel like, you know, it's U.S. taking their own decision. So, I mean, I think they just continue engaging the U.S. authorities to see how best, I mean, they can resolve, I mean, this issue. But at the end of the day, this is someone that you're going to predict. I mean, that's Trump for you.
Exactly.
That's Trump for you. So,
so very unpredictable. Well, thank you for that, Aliu. And story number 7. Aliu and I and many Gambians, we love football. And it has been announced by the Gambia Football Federation that they're projecting that by 2026, the Gambia will have a professional football league. Yes, I'm not making this up. This story from our colleague, Mamadou Gajaga, will tell you more.
It's about ownership. This is our country. We all love sports. We all watch sports. So I think having this is really good for all of us. It will bring a lot of benefits to the Gambia. The costs are high, but unless and until we strategize, we know where we want to get to. We never get to the destination.
The professionalization
of a professional football league in the country will not only raise the standard of football in the country, or accrue financial benefits to investors, players, officials, and by extension the larger football community, but it will undoubtedly complement the government's program of creating more jobs to a good number of youths.
complementing government's program of creating more jobs. Aliu, I don't want to pour cold water on this before it's even gotten out of the thing, but a country the size of the Gambia, do we have the population for a professional football league? And also, how realistic is this when Nawetan games draw bigger crowds than First Division League matches? How realistic is this?
Yeah, how realistic is it? It's a big question mark that we are all asking, but I mean, this has been something that the country has been yearning for, and then I think we have to commend the current GFF leadership for taking the bold step to translate a commitment into action. Yes, I mean, regarding the how ready we are as a country, I mean, the challenges are quite enormous as far as, I mean, you know, actualizing this lofty idea of, I mean, professionalizing our football league. To start with, infrastructure.
Yeah,
I mean, we don't have the right infrastructure in place. I mean, this country we have only one stadium. If you go to most of these mini stadia, I mean, in Bakau, Serekunda, I mean,
they're not of the standard.
Exactly. So that's a problem, and also the issue of, I mean, governance and transparency is something that people are also, you know, questioning. I mean, we know some people, I mean, they believe, I mean, the federation is not as transparent, I mean, as they should in terms of, you know, funds coming from FIFA and all those things. Those are opinions. On the other hand, the GFF will tell you, I mean, we are quite transparent. Our funds are audited by FIFA. So, I mean, we have nothing to worry about. But then, like you said, it's quite important, and then to actualize this lofty idea, they would really need, I mean, the backing of government. Government has a huge role to play in this thing, and also private investors.
I'm glad you mentioned private investors.
Private investment.
Because if we go outside of the Gambia, in a lot of the countries close to us, where there are like Nigeria, Ghana, for example, where there is professional or semi-professional. I mean, even in those countries, I mean, much bigger countries than the Gambia, so they have some professionals and some semi-professionals. You know, Nigeria is 1,000 times the size of the Gambia. But what they've done is private sector have come in to sponsor teams. And of course, you know, we've seen, in Sierra Leone, Bo Rangers, there's a businessman who sponsors that team, and they've been, you know, Premier League champions over the last 2 years, maybe even 3. And their stadium is better than the national stadium. So, you know, private sector could come in, and that guy has been able to make all his players professionals. They don't have to worry about going to their day job, coming to train for football. Football is their job.
It's their job.
And that's what we need. We need the private sector to come in a similar manner in the Gambia if we are serious about, you know,
because it's important, and that's why, because when you look at it, most of these clubs, they are really struggling in terms of meeting their financial commitments. I mean, most of these, I mean, league players, if they tell you how much they are being paid per month, Mr. you will say, no, this is not true.
I know one club which is owned and run by somebody who is a teacher and a part-time reporter.
Exactly. So imagine, I mean, where will you get the funds to sustain that club? So at the end of the day, what you do, you end up just selling the club to someone
the richer clubs.
And then it's good that, like you said, I mean, we have, I mean, investors coming in to invest in sports. For example, just an example, Q City. I mean, they have their academy. They can have a team that can play, you know, qualifies and qualify into the First Division League. I mean, it's backed by someone who has the financial muscles to take care of the team and pay their players well. So once we have this kind of clubs, then, you know, it's going to help in actually realizing the goal of, you know, trying to have a professional league. But other than that, it's really going to be difficult, because no, most of these clubs are struggling, and I think the key objective of this idea is at least to help most of these clubs unlock, I mean, their revenue, improve their revenue base, and of course, you know, try to also promote talents and you know, expose our league to international viewers, but also, I mean, the issue of publicity, broadcast, I mean, is something that is very important. Even if you have a professional league and then, you know, it's not being shown on screen, then the impact within, because the media plays a huge role in terms of, you know, promoting the league.
Just before we came in, I was watching on YouTube, literally just before we came in, the Uganda police were playing a match, and it was streamed live,
It
and
was
the picture was
streamed live.
beautiful.
It was streamed live.
On YouTube.
So
beautiful pictures.
Yeah, it was streamed live.
You know,
it was streamed live.
This is what we can do.
So that's all we need. Yeah, private investors,
Yeah.
government. To be honest with you, I mean, in terms of supporting national team in this case, I mean, the government has been doing extremely well. To be honest,
but it needs to seep down to the club size.
Definitely, yeah.
Thank you for that, Ali. Thank you. And now on to a very, very different subject, and again something that I'm always kind of banging on about: malaria. We're always fighting malaria, and one of the ways we fight malaria is by distributing bed nets. And there's been a distribution from the 13th to the 18th, I think, of June. And again, this is part of the ongoing fight to combat malaria. Have a look, have a listen.
It was made during QTV's This Morning program, a one-hour talk show that explores various societal issues and governance topics. In the Gambia, malaria has long been a significant concern for the public. Health workers emphasize that malaria is not just a vacuum threat, it is a persistent challenge. Preventive measures include avoiding mosquito bites and taking medicines as necessary, with sleeping under insecticide-treated nets, and indoor residual spraying being key strategies in malaria control and elimination. To combat this persistent yet avoidable threat, the Directorate of Health Promotion and Education under the Ministry of Health will distribute bed nets nationwide to help prevent infection. Shortly before the country observes Eid al-Adha, locally known as Tabaski, health officials distributed bed nets to households in the provincial areas of the Gambia.
I said one of the reasons why I'm always banging on about this is because there are African countries that are now malaria-free, but none of them did it with a vaccine. None of them did it with bed nets. So for me, bed nets are just one fraction of this fight. The stronger and the bigger fight is to make the country, we need to starve mosquitoes of their breeding grounds. That's how you stop malaria in any country. And that's what, this needs to go hand in hand. So otherwise, as they said, it's otherwise like putting a small plaster on a gaping wound. It's not going to do it. It might cover a part of it. I mean, it might, you know, they say mass bed net distribution. Unless you're distributing 1 million, there are lots who are not going to get it and are going to be bitten by mosquitoes. And
at the end of the day, how many people are in fact going to use these bed nets? I mean,
and when you're not under the net,
you're
out and about, mosquitoes still can feast on you.
Like you said, I mean, what we need is a permanent solution. And that permanent solution is the idea you're talking about. And so that, you know, we clean our environment and make sure we don't give the mosquitoes that breeding space where, I mean, we all can have malaria. But it's a good thing that they come up with the bed nets. Maybe, I mean, there's a certain part of the country where, I mean, this is a necessity. They need the bed nets, but at the end of the day, like you said, coming up with a permanent solution is the only key, you know, permanent solution to addressing the issue of malaria in this country. Because, I mean, when you look at the impact of malaria, it affects millions of people.
Well, indeed,
Many people lose their lives due to malaria.
I mean, we're encouraged in the Gambia because the numbers have gone down quite dramatically in the last 10 years of those who've died from malaria. So we're sort of winning the fight, but we need to do a lot more.
We need to, especially now with the rainy season approaching. I mean, there's a time, I mean, when malaria cases are quite high in our health facilities. And I just hope, I mean, if you are given the mosquito bed nets, you also take advantage and make best use of it. I don't think it's right for one to receive a bed net and then, you know, you are trying to sell it. Some people can do that. They can have the bed net and just sell it at a giveaway price because they believe, I mean, it's not important.
Like you said, you're given it for a reason, use it for that reason. Thank you, Aliu. And story number 9, our penultimate story. This is another one of those deja vu moments. You'll hear this and think, hang on a minute, haven't we been here before? What am I talking about? Well, complaints from the Transport Union about relations between us and Senegal in terms of transportation and trade. Yes, we've been here before. Have a look, have a listen.
Ministers of Trade, Transport and other stakeholders, IGPs, other securities. We discuss agreement, bring the standard operational guidelines between the two countries. But unfortunately, the Senegal didn't implement theirs. That's the funniest part.
They're not fulfilling their part of the agreement.
They agreed, but they don't implement it. So still our Gambian transit goods from Gambian port continue to face the same challenges, even beyond the scope of last year.
Caesar says these practices by their Senegalese counterparts violate the bilateral agreement signed at Mansakonko between the governments of the Gambia and Senegal in August 2024.
Viewers, Aliyu and I are both smiling at this report because, Aliyu, as I said, we've been here before and I suspect we'll be here again.
and again.
Honestly, on a more serious note, is there a kind of workable, lastable, viable solution to this so we don't have to cover this type of story again?
I think for me, I mean, this is something that both countries could have avoided. I mean, if they all have respected the ECOWAS protocol on free movement of goods and people. I mean, there is something that binds all of you, that is this protocol.
And our governments, both governments signed up
exactly,
to it.
Exactly. But I mean, the issue of people not respecting the protocols is one of the key reasons why ECOWAS is now losing that respect from people. Absolutely. I mean, there's already a protocol on free movement of goods and people. So why is it that, I mean, Senegal wouldn't respect, I mean, something that they have agreed with a country that is a neighbor to you?
And one of the reasons I brought this up is because you have regularly been at the ECOWAS Parliament, and I just wondered whether topics like this come up for discussion on a regular basis, and I suspect they do.
They do come up, because even in the last ordinary session that they had in Abuja, this was one of the key issues that they were discussing. I remember, I mean, the president of the ECOWAS Commission, Dr. Toure, I mean, talking about the numerous checkpoints you have, I mean, at the borders. Yes, I mean, we should ensure that there is security. We should ensure that people are identified. But that shouldn't be a recipe for people to have the challenges of, you know, traveling as they should, I mean, traveling freely.
It makes it a really unpleasant experience.
Exactly. So sometimes you don't really get it. I mean, you know, they harass you, they try to extort money from you. I mean, as an ECOWAS citizen, so sometimes it's quite difficult. But I mean, like you said, I mean, these are things that we expect both governments, of course, government of the Gambia and Senegal to sit again and map out, I mean, sort out all the issues that they have to ensure that, you know, our drivers who are living in this country, Senegal, can travel, I mean, smoothly. But it just doesn't make sense. I mean, when you have to, you know, travel from here to Senegal and, you know, you face all sort of, you know, intimidation, harassment at the borders. I mean, and that's the reality. That's the fact.
And we can't whitewash it at all. And
that's the fact. And then when they are coming to the Gambia, I mean, they are given all the VIP treatment. I mean, we give them all the necessary, all what they need. But imagine, I mean, if you have to travel to Senegal, you know, you face, you know, so many challenges at the border. I remember there was this particular time I was going to Dakar, and then, you know, I crossed to the border with some senior officials who were traveling to Nigeria. Imagine a delegation from the government of the Gambia is traveling, but they spend almost like 1 hour at the border.
That really should not be.
That shouldn't be. That shouldn't be.
Yeah, like I said, and as you said, our governments really need to thrash it out, because as well as the ECOWAS protocol, we've also signed bilateral agreements, and that's what makes it really painful.
They need to. You know, when they come here, I mean, they are given all the privileges, they are given all that they need. But I mean, when you travel to Senegal, it's quite challenging, it's quite difficult.
Yeah, thank you, Aliyu, and I hope we won't be discussing this time next year. And that brings us up to our final story, and a very interesting one. This, I said, Aliyu and I both like football. We love football, in fact. And one of the biggest games played recently wasn't what you might call a competitive qualifier. It was a friendly, but the result reverberated around the world. No exaggeration. Have a look, have a listen.
For the first time on the Tuchel, when Ismail Assar caught Kyle Walker napping to poke in Nicholas Jackson's cross in the 40th minute. The visitors doubled their lead in the 62nd minute when Habib Diarra latched onto the ball over the top, then fired through goalkeeper Dean Henderson's legs for his 4th goal in 4 internationals. Sheikh Tijan Sabali then struck deep into stoppage time, prompting boos from England fans after the final whistle. A friendly, defeating England shows the quality Senegalese football, especially as the England fans and media, treat every game, even friendlies, as matches to be won. Former Senegal striker El Hadji Diouf was in his team's delegation to see history being made.
Aliyu, to say I followed this would be an understatement. I had followed the days before when I saw them training. I in fact saw them arrive in England, saw them training, I saw the pre-match press conference, and then the match itself and the post. And the thing that came through all of that was how relaxed they were. Yes, maybe because it was a friendly, but as we heard there, I lived in England for 50 odd years, whatever it was. To them, a friendly is not just a friendly. The British public and the British media expects the English team, or the England team, I should say, to win every game. And they were booed off at the end and slaughtered in the newspapers the next day. So quite a result.
I saw some of the headlines on that tabloids. I was like, wow. But like you said, the same way, I mean, England didn't just take the game as a friendly game. It was the same for Senegal. This was a very important game for them. I think, I mean, according to record, this is the first time that, I mean, England is losing to
when we were watching
the African side.
When we were watching the game, I said, the game was 10 minutes in, and I said, I don't think England have ever lost to an African side. And then I went on the internet, and sure enough, it came up. This was the 22nd time that they had played against an African side, either in a competition, usually the World Cup, or in a friendly, and they had never lost. They'd won most of them and drawn the rest, but they never lost. And so that, and of course, as soon as the game finished, that was what all the commentators were saying, actually. And then, you know, people were saying, you were right. So you're right. I mean, they take these games very seriously.
Exactly. So it was good for Senegal as well, I mean, to actually break that record, beat England on their own soil. That was historic. And also it confirmed Senegal as one of the top guns in global football, not just in Africa, but on the world.
And the captain wasn't there, Sadio Mane.
Sadio Mane wasn't there. Exactly, Sadio Mane wasn't there. He
decided not to play. But in fact, I was surprised he didn't even go as a spectator.
He was in Mecca performing Hajj.
Yes, you know, so.
So I think it's a good thing, I mean, for Senegal, I mean, to beat England. I mean, it sends a message to other countries ahead of the upcoming tournaments. The World Cup is coming, 2026. The AFCON is coming up. I mean, so these are all important tournaments, and it was really a good friendly for Senegal.
And there was a kind of double 22. So it was 22 games for England before they lost to an African team, and it is now 22 games undefeated for Senegal, which is the longest record of any current international side. 22 games unbeaten. So that also shows their strength.
So I think Senegal was on top of their game. I mean, they didn't just won the game, but they outplayed the English side. I mean, they played extremely.
And it was a mixture of
so many shot on targets, and you know. So I mean, I think it was a good thing. I mean, having Ismaila Sarr, Habib Diarra, and of course Seck Sabali. I mean, it's something that, you know, is historic, and
it bodes well for the future. But I think
exactly.
If what I did afterwards was I looked at how the rest of Africa reported it, and I have to say, most of Africa celebrated it as a victory for African football, and said, yes, we know it's a friendly, but now maybe the world will sit up and listen. And in the same way that they did in the 2002 World Cup, when Senegal again beat France, who were then holders, you know, and Senegal ended up topping a group which included the holders, France, and in fact France ended up exiting the competition, I think, without even scoring a goal. I think that's the first time any defending world champion has ever done that. But Senegal, you know, then announced themselves to the world because that was their first qualification for the World Cup.
That's time, you know, Papa Diop and many others, Kalilou Fadiga and others.
Henri Camara.
Exactly.
You know, Aliou Cissé.
You know, But overall, it's a good outing. It was a good international break for Senegal. Like you said, even without the likes of Sadio Mane and others, I mean, they went out there and proved that, you know, they have what it takes to play against any European team and win. And then for me,
so any lessons to learn for Gambia? I know it's not comparing like with like, but are there any lessons?
Lessons to learn from Senegal is believe in yourself. Don't build your team just around few individuals. You know, that is key. Also, we should invest more in infrastructure. That is key. Senegal, they have quite a number of professionals. Senegal can pick up from any of the professionals. But I think first thing we should learn from Senegal is believing in ourselves, knowing that the team is bigger than an individual, and also to invest more in our game.
I think that's a brilliant point to end on, and it takes us back to story number 7 that we covered today, our professional league. That could be kickstart something big. Aliu, I really have to thank you for your interjections today. Thank you very much. And of course to you, Lamidi Sonko, thank you very much for your interpretations and translations, and of course most of all to you, the viewer, for watching. So until we come your way again next week, goodbye.